I shouldn't have taken that job. God, I shouldn't have taken it. The ad seemed simple enough, though. Night security guard needed for Billings Memorial Library, $25 an hour. Minimal responsibilities, background check required. The pay was nearly double what I was making at the mall, and libraries are quiet, right? Perfect place to catch up on my podcasts, maybe even study for the classes I kept promising myself I'd take. But they never mentioned that the shelves would be empty. Not a single book. Not one. Just endless rows of vacant shelves stretching into shadows that seemed to swallow my flashlight beam whole. And they never told me about the whispers. It's been 3 weeks since I quit. 3 weeks of nightmares, of waking up gasping for air, of feeling something cold brush against my neck when I'm home alone. The doctors say it's PTSD. The therapist suggests it might be a psychotic break from the sleep deprivation. But they weren't there. They didn't hear what I heard. They didn't see what I saw on my final night, when I discovered what really happened to all of those books and all the people who had gone missing over the years. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know the truth about Billings Memorial Library, and because the whispers are getting louder now, even in my own home. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can feel the cold shelves beneath my fingertips. I can smell the peculiar musty odor that wasn't quite dust and wasn't quite mold, but something more organic. I don't think I have much time left, but someone needs to know what's in there, what's waiting in the stacks for the next person desperate enough to take that job. My name is Jason Fleming, and this is what happened during my 2 weeks as a night guard at the library with no books. The building itself should have been my first warning. Billings Memorial Library stood at the edge of town, perched on a small hill overlooking the river valley. Victorian architecture, all Gothic spires and weathered stone with gargoyles crouching along the roofline. The kind of place that would fit perfectly in a Lovecraft story. Local legends said it had been built by Elias Billings in 1887, a wealthy industrialist with eccentric interests who disappeared under mysterious circumstances just after the library's completion. During my interview, the head librarian, Mrs. Winters, a severe woman with steel gray hair and eyes that never quite met mine, explained that the library was undergoing extensive renovations and inventory assessment. All books had been temporarily relocated to climate-controlled storage facilities. The building itself needed to remain secure during this process, hence the need for a night security. "You won't need to patrol the entire building," she said, sliding a ring of ancient-looking keys across her desk. "Just the main floor and reference section. The rare books collection and basement archives are kept locked at all times." "When will the books be returned?" I asked. Something flickered in her eyes. Amusement? Pity? "Soon," she said. "They've been gone for quite some time, but they always return in one form or another." I should have walked out then, but I needed the money, and the night shift meant I could still keep my day job until I built up some savings. My first night was uneventful if unsettling. The emptiness of the place was disorienting. Row after row of vacant shelves, reading tables with no books or readers, computer stations with monitors draped in plastic. The silence felt wrong somehow. Libraries are supposed to be quiet, but the silence had weight to it. Density, as if the air itself was listening. Around 2 a.m., I heard what I thought was a page turning, just that soft, distinctive rustle. I followed the sound to the reference section, but found nothing, just more empty shelves. On the second night, the whispers started. They were faint at first, so faint I thought it was just the building settling or pipes knocking. But as I patrolled the empty shelves, they became more distinct, not quiet words, but something close, like a conversation happening beyond the range of hearing. I tried to track the sounds, but they seemed to move, always coming from the next row over or just around the corner, always receding when I approached. By 3 a.m., I was thoroughly spooked and retreated to the security desk near the entrance, where I remained until my shift ended at dawn. On the third night, I brought a digital recorder. If there was some kind of ventilation issue or animal infestation creating those sounds, I wanted proof to show Mrs. Winters. I set up the recorder in the reference section where the whispers had been most persistent and continued my rounds. When I checked the recording later, my blood ran cold. Between bursts of static, there were voices, multiple voices, having what sounded like an ordinary conversation, except they were talking about me.
The new one seems most perceptive. Won't last long, just like the others. Might be suitable, though. We should test. Patience. The hunger grows, but we must be certain.
I convinced myself it was a prank. One of the day staff must have found my recorder and decided to mess with the new guy. I deleted the file and resolved to be more careful with my belongings. The fourth night, I found the first trace. It was a single sheet of paper on the floor in the philosophy section, yellowed with age, the edges crumbling, covered in dense handwriting that seemed to change styles mid-sentence, as if multiple people had written it. Most of it was illegible, but I could make out phrases, the space between words. They feed on meaning. The collection grows hungry. When I picked it up, the paper felt warm, almost alive, and the writing seemed to shift slightly under my gaze, letters rearranging themselves when I wasn't looking directly at them. I dropped it, heart pounding, and watched in horror as the page dissolved into nothing, like ash blown away by an unfelt wind. I almost quit right then. I should have quit, but I told myself I was being ridiculous. Sleep deprivation, stress from working 2 jobs, and overactive imagination fueled by too many horror novels. There had to be rational explanations. On the 5th night, I met David. He was sitting at one of the reading tables when I turned the corner. An older man, maybe 60s, with a tweed jacket and reading glasses. He looked up as my flashlight beam hit him and smiled apologetically. "I'm terribly sorry," he said, his voice cultured and precise. "I must have lost track of time. Is the library closing?" I stammered something about the library being closed for renovations. No patrons allowed after hours. How did he get in? "Oh, I've been here for quite a while," he said, still smiling that gentle smile. "I was doing research, you see. Quite lost in it, to be honest." "Research?" I gestured to the empty shelves. "There aren't any books." His smile widened fractionally. "The books are still here, young man, just not in the form you're accustomed to." I should have called the police, should have escorted him out. Instead, I asked, "What do you mean?" He stood then, and I noticed something odd about his movements, too fluid, almost boneless. "Let me show you," he said, and started walking toward the rare books collection, the section Mrs. Winters had explicitly told me to avoid. I followed him, telling myself I needed to make sure he left the building. At the heavy oak door marked Special Collections, he paused and turned to me. "Do you have the key?" he asked. "I seem to have misplaced mine." "I'm not supposed to—" Of course, he interrupted smoothly. "Rules are important. Structure, order, cataloging. These things matter greatly, but sometimes to truly understand a collection, one must browse freely." Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. I took a step back. "Sir, I need to ask you to leave now. The library is closed." His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Something cold and hungry and ancient. "Another time, perhaps," he said. Then he turned and walked down a row of shelves. I followed quickly, not wanting to lose sight of him, but when I turned the corner, the aisle was empty. He had vanished. I spent the next hour searching the main floor, but found no trace of him. All doors remained locked, all windows closed. It was as if he had never been there at all. When I described him to Mrs. Winters the next morning, her face went pale. "That sounds like Dr. David Ambrose," she said quietly. "He was the head librarian here before me. Maybe he still has keys." She shook her head slowly. "That's not possible. Dr. Ambrose disappeared 14 years ago. He went into the rare books collection one evening and never came out. The police investigation found nothing. I quit that day, or tried to." Mrs. Winters listened to my stammered explanation with that same impassive expression, then slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was cash, a full month's salary. "Consider it your severance," she said, "and perhaps an incentive to be discreet about your experiences here." I should have walked away, taken the money, and never looked back, but I couldn't stop thinking about David Ambrose, about the whispers, and about the empty shelves that somehow didn't feel empty at all. So I came back that night, not as an employee, but as an investigator. I had no real plan, just a burning need to prove to myself that there was a rational explanation for everything I'd experienced. I parked a few blocks away and used the service entrance, where the lock had been broken for years, according to the day janitor. The library was different at night when I wasn't supposed to be there, darker somehow, though the same emergency lights still glowed at intervals. The shadows between the shelves seemed deeper, almost substantial, and the whispers, they were louder now, more urgent, almost excited. I made my way to the rare books collection, the key I'd forgotten to return heavy in my pocket. At the door, I hesitated. Whatever answers I was seeking, I knew with bone-deep certainty that they lay on the other side. But I also knew with that same certainty that once I turned that key, there would be no going back. I thought of David Ambrose's strange smile, of the moving shadows and whispering voices, of all the strange disappearances associated with Billings Memorial Library over its 136-year history. Not just Dr. Ambrose, but dozens of others. Researchers, students, and the occasional homeless person seeking shelter, all vanished without a trace. The key turned smoothly in the lock. The heavy door swung open without a sound, revealing a darkness so complete it seemed solid. My flashlight beam couldn't penetrate more than a few feet into it. I almost turned back then. I should have. But I heard my name whispered from within that darkness, my full name, which I had never shared with anyone at the library, and beneath that, a rustling sound, like pages turning, thousands of pages, all at once. I stepped inside. The rare books collection was not empty. The shelves were filled, floor to ceiling, with books of all sizes. Ancient leather-bound tomes next to modern paperbacks, next to what looked like scrolls and tablets from antiquity. Every shelf, every table, every inch of floor space covered in reading material. But as I drew closer, I realized with mounting horror that these weren't ordinary books. The covers moved, rippled, breathed, and they were made of, oh God, they were made of skin, human skin, in various shades and textures, some fresh, some ancient and desiccated, all of them bound around yellowing bone. The pages I could glimpse were thin cross-sections of what appeared to be brain matter, dried and preserved somehow, covered in symbols that hurt my eyes to look at directly. And they were all slightly moving, shifting, pages turning by themselves, covers opening and closing like gasping mouths. I heard a noise behind me and turned to see David Ambrose standing there, but he was different now. His skin hung loosely on his frame like a suit a few sizes too large. His smile stretched literally from ear to ear, the corners of his mouth torn and ragged. "Welcome to the True Collection," he said in a voice that echoed strangely, as if multiple people were speaking in unison. "You've been so curious, so persistent. We do appreciate an inquiring mind." What is this place?" I managed to ask, my own voice distant and strange to my ears. "A library is a repository of knowledge, is it not?" He gestured to the shelves of horrors surrounding us. "Here we preserve not just the words people have written, but the experiences, memories, and subconsciousness of the writers themselves. Much more efficient, don't you think? Why read about a life when you can absorb it directly?" As he spoke, I noticed his form beginning to unravel. The skin of his face sagged, revealing something underneath that was neither bone nor flesh, but a writhing mass of what looked like black filaments, intertwined and constantly moving. "The Billings discovered the process centuries ago," he continued, seemingly unaware or unconcerned with his disintegrating appearance. "A way to distill a human life into its essence, to transform flesh into text, experience into knowledge. Of course, it requires donors." I backed toward the door, but found only solid wall behind me. The entrance had vanished. "Don't be frightened," said the thing that had been David Ambrose. "You've already proven yourself exceptional. Most new guards don't notice anything amiss for weeks. Some never do, but you heard us immediately. You sensed us. You sought us out. You'll make a magnificent addition to the collection." The filaments were spreading now, reaching out from what remained of his disintegrating form. I could see similar movements from the books on the shelves, tendrils extending, reaching, hungry. "What are you?" I whispered. "We are the librarians," the voices said in unison, no longer just coming from Ambrose, but from all around me. "We are the catalog. We are the preserved wisdom of ages, and soon you will be a part of us." I ran, blindly, desperately, plunging deeper into the impossible library. The shelves seemed to stretch and shift around me, pathways changing, distances expanding. The whispers rose to a roar, a cacophony of voices, all speaking at once, pleading, demanding, screaming. My lungs burned as I sprinted down corridors that shouldn't exist, past shelves that reached impossible heights. The floor beneath me felt increasingly soft, yielding like flesh with each footfall. Behind me, I could hear the wet, slapping sounds of the things pursuing me, the librarians, the collection, whatever unholy amalgamation they represented. The air grew thick, almost gelatinous, making each breath a struggle. I turned a corner and froze, dead end. Shelves stacked with those horrific books blocked my path, their covers pulsing with a sickly rhythm. As I watched, frozen with terror, several of them began to open and close like mouths, gasping for air or hungry for new material. "There's nowhere to go," came David Ambrose's voice, now a chorus of dozens of tones speaking in unison. "The collection is infinite. Every path leads back to us." I spun around. The thing that had been Ambrose stood at the other end of the aisle, but it barely resembled a human anymore. The tweed jacket hung on a frame that continuously shifted and reformed, black tendrils writhing beneath tattered skin. What had once been a face was now mostly those strange filaments with only Ambrose's eyes and that terrible, stretching smile remaining recognizable. "Your consciousness has such interesting contours," the voice continued. "So much fear, so much curiosity. The perfect combination. You'll make a wonderful addition." The tendrils from the creature shot forward with impossible speed, wrapping around my ankles. I screamed and fell backward, crashing into the shelves behind me. Several of the skin-bound volumes tumbled down, landing with wet, meaty sounds around me. Where they touched the floor, the carpet seemed to melt, revealing something organic beneath. Pulsing tissues in shades of gray and black threaded with what looked like neural connections. The entire library was alive, one massive thinking organism. As I scrambled away from Ambrose, my hand landed on one of the fallen books. The moment I touched it, images flooded my mind, someone else's memories. A young woman researching her dissertation, staying late at the library, following whispers, finding that same door, and then pain, transformation, consumption, her consciousness preserved like an insect in amber, readable for eternity. The book's cover moved beneath my palm, warm and slick. It was trying to fuse with my skin. With a cry of revulsion, I hurled the book directly at the advancing Ambrose thing. It connected with what remained of his face, and for a brief moment, the creature seemed to fracture. Dozens of separate entities temporarily losing cohesion, like a swarm of insects momentarily scattered. In that instant of confusion, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A thin stream of actual darkness along the floor, different from the oppressive shadows around us. A gap, an opening beneath the lowest shelf. Without thinking, I dropped to my stomach and rolled toward it, feeling the tendrils grasp at my legs. One wrapped around my ankle, searing pain shooting up my leg as it seemed to sink beneath my skin. I kicked violently, feeling something tear. Whether it was the tendril or my own flesh, I couldn't tell. I squeezed into the gap, barely wide enough for my shoulders. Complete darkness enveloped me as I crawled forward, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter. The space widened gradually, allowing me to move faster, though I could feel something wet and warm beneath my palms pulsing rhythmically. The whispers changed character now, no longer threatening but pleading, bargaining, offering knowledge beyond human comprehension, the collected wisdom of everyone who had ever been added to the collection, immortality of a sort, purpose. For a terrifying moment, I felt myself hesitate. Part of me, a dark, curious part I hadn't known existed, wanted to turn back, to see what secrets the collection held, to become part of something eternal. Then I felt the tendrils again, probing the tunnel behind me, and panic overwrote curiosity. I crawled faster, ignoring the increasingly frantic whispers, the promises, the threats. The tunnel began to slope upward. The soft organic surface beneath me gradually hardened, becoming concrete and then soil. A faint breeze touched my face, fresh air, carrying the scent of wet grass and night-blooming flowers. With a final desperate surge, I pulled myself out of a narrow opening that shouldn't have existed, a gap between the foundation of the library and the earth itself, half hidden by overgrown shrubbery on the hillside behind the building. As I dragged myself fully into the open air, I felt something snap, like a thread being cut or connection being severed. Looking back at my ankle where the tendril had been wrapped, I saw nothing but a strange mark, like a burn in the shape of an intricate symbol. Dawn was breaking over the horizon, the first rays of sunlight touching the Gothic spires of Billings Memorial Library. From the outside, it looked solid, immutable, just an old building on a hill. But I knew what writhed within those walls, what waited in the stacks. I half ran, half stumbled to my car, never looking back, though I could feel eyes watching from every window of that cursed building. Only when I was miles away, the library no longer visible in my rear view mirror, did I finally allow myself to breathe. But even then, I knew with terrible certainty that I hadn't truly escaped. Something had changed inside me. Something had been planted or taken or both. In the weeks since, I've researched the Billings family obsessively, their connections to occult societies in the late 19th century, the mysterious research expeditions to remote parts of the world from which they returned with artifacts that never made it into any public collection, the unusually high number of servants, associates, and even family members who disappeared without explanation, and the library itself built over the ruins of something much older, something the original indigenous inhabitants of the region avoided entirely, marking it on their maps with warnings about the place where shadows speak and the hungering void. The whispers follow me now. At first they were distant, barely perceptible except in the deepest silence of night. But they're growing stronger, clearer, more insistent. I hear them in my apartment, in my car, in the shower. Sometimes they speak my name in dozens of voices at once. Sometimes they recite passages from books I've never read, in languages I shouldn't even understand. But I do. The mark on my wrist has begun to spread, fine lines extending up my arm like branches or veins or the edges of pages. The skin around it feels different, thinner, more parchment-like. When I press it, I don't feel the sensation in my arm, but somewhere behind my eyes, as if the nerve connections have been rewired. Sometimes, when I catch a glimpse of my reflection unexpectedly, I see someone else looking back, someone with David Ambrose's peculiar smile. It's only for an instant, gone when I look directly, but I know what I saw. Yesterday, I found a book on my coffee table that I don't remember owning. Leather-bound with no title on the spine or cover. I'm afraid to open it, afraid of what might be written inside, or worse, what might not be written yet. I don't think I fully escaped that night. I think I brought something back with me, or Perhaps left something behind, a piece of myself already being processed, cataloged, and bound? The doctors say there's nothing physically wrong with me despite my complaints of headaches, memory lapses, and the strange sensations in my arm. The therapist suggests it might be PTSD or perhaps a psychotic break from sleep deprivation. I've stopped telling them about the whispers, about how sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I can feel myself standing in the rare books collection again, my consciousness stretched between two places at once. Last night, I dreamed I was a book. I could feel hands opening me, eyes reading my pages, absorbing the story of my life. When I woke, there were paper cuts on my fingertips that I don't remember getting. I'm writing this as a warning. If you see a job posting for Billings Memorial Library, ignore it. If you hear whispers coming from empty bookshelves, run. And if you ever meet a librarian named David Ambrose with his gentle smile and tweed jacket, do not, under any circumstances, follow him into the stacks. Because in that library, you don't read the books. The books read you, and they're always hungry for new material. I feel the change accelerating now. The lines on my arm have reached my shoulder, spreading across my chest like text filling a page. The whispers are no longer just in my head. I can see people reacting when they happen to pass by me in public, looking around for the source of voices that seem to emanate from me, yet aren't my own. Sometimes I find myself standing in front of bookshelves, in stores or in other libraries, with no memory of how I got there. My fingers tracing spines, feeling for something familiar, something like me. I've started to dream in languages I don't know, started to remember things I never experienced. A childhood in Victorian London, a research expedition in Cambodia in the 1920s, a lecture series at Miskatonic University that ended in screams. They're not my memories, they belong to the collection, and now gradually I fear, so do I. I suspect this account may be the last fully human thing I create. Already, I can feel my thoughts becoming less my own, my perspective shifting to something broader, older, and hungrier. There's a certain peace in it, a surrender to inevitability. The collection has existed for centuries, perhaps millennia. It has patience. It always finds a way to grow. But if some part of my consciousness remains, some fragment of Jason Fleming that isn't fully absorbed, let it remember this warning. Knowledge has a price. Curiosity can be fatal, and some libraries are not meant for human visitation. If you've read this far, be careful. The collection knows you now. It knows you're interested, and it knows you seek answers. And it's always looking for new acquisitions. Have you ever experienced something inexplicable in a library? Those strange whispers when you're alone in the stacks, the feeling of being watched as you browse empty aisles, that book you could swear you put back but somehow finds its way into your bag? Libraries are special, liminal places, thresholds between worlds of knowledge and imagination. Perhaps it's no wonder they sometimes become thin spots between our reality and something else. Please be bold and share your experiences in the comments below, not just for my peace of mind, but for your own safety, because if what happened to me is happening elsewhere, we all need to know, and I know other listeners will surely benefit from knowing they are not alone. And if you've ever heard of Billings Memorial Library or the Billings family and their collections, please reach out. I need to understand what's happening to me before it's too late, before I become just another volume on those hungry shelves. Thanks for listening to another of my Dark Veil tales. If you enjoyed the story and want to hear more, be sure to click on the linked story here or others in my videos, and if you're so inclined, please like or subscribe to my channel. It will definitely be appreciated. Have a frightfully fantastic day.